And we're good. How's it going?
Good afternoon, Radioland.
Good afternoon, Jeff.
Yeah, Arnold, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. A little bit of an update on me. I have a torn deltoid ligament, which is on my ankle. And that's how I'm doing right now. But other than that, I'm good.
I know Arnold's like over here posted up on one seat with his foot posted up on another seat, stretching to reach the keyboard with his free hand. So
Yeah.
he is a man of many talents.
A stretchy talent.
Yes.
How are you doing, Jeff?
Oh, we're doing all right. We're doing all right. It's getting close to Thanksgiving. My daughter's actually doing light tech on her first show in high school. Starts tonight, so we are going to do that.
Cool.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
fun.
Yes. So that's been part of the grand adventure. So
Yeah. I've heard some fun stories already about Sydney's drama class
you know what? You cannot spell drama
without.
drama. I mean, that's, yeah. I mean, it's just like holy cow, man. And the funny thing is that we had COVID, obviously for the last year and a half school year wise. It started off, I think that would have been their 8th grade second semester, so that March of 2020, right before spring break. And so she was doing drama, she was doing and trying to be in tech there and stuff, and she did some tech services for some shows in middle school. And the thing was that the drama teacher would get upset at the actors because, again, the actors wanted to act. They said they wanted to act. They signed up to act, but they wouldn't come to practices. They wouldn't rehearse their lines, and they didn't fully know one show's worth of lines until like 2 days before the show. So I mean, it's like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That sounds like a middle school play.
Yeah,
A middle school drama class.
Yeah, and then it's kind of the same stuff with the high school. Is that again? People not wanting to come, and people being melodramatic and not wanting to learn lines and stay for practices but it's.
I mean, kids got lives apparently.
Apparently, and it's that lost art of if you sign up to do something, you put forth your best effort, and so some other people catch the flack for that, and so but hopefully they're able to pull it together in the end, and the show is going to be fantabulous. So we'll see. We shall see. We shall see. So.
Okay, so on the docket for today, is that how you say that?
That's how we say it now. But yeah, that works. Docket applies.
Is that docket? Is that what they say?
Yes.
I don't know. Anyway, so I'm reading this book, Wild at Heart.
Right.
Have you heard of it?
I have not heard of it until you brought it to my attention.
Okay.
Honestly.
Like probably the other week I brought it to your attention.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's a fun book. It's Wild at Heart by John Eldredge.
Okay.
Discovering the Secret of a Man's Soul.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Men have soul?
We got soul. Yeah, I'm sure James Brown knew that. But yeah, it's a fun book, and it helps you, and it's from a Christian writer. So from a Christian perspective, like what makes a man, or what do men have in their hearts and their souls, kind of the way we tick.
Right.
So to speak.
So what you're saying is that even though we live in 2021 America, there's a difference between the genders.
What? Yeah, what?
Well, that's so narrow-minded of you, Arnold.
Well, I identify as a man.
Okay, there you go. No.
So,
by the way, all of us here believe in the two genders, just in case you were wondering. Yes, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I know you bring it up to the wrong person. Yeah, they're going to have a fight with you, but I'm not interested in that as much as I'm interested as my own, journey here.
Right.
And I know what I believe, right? And I do believe that as this book kind of puts it down in such a great way. This author, he says, we're made in the image of God. We are, so like we have these characteristics, these traits that he actually shows us that he has, in all these stories that we read, obviously in the Old Testament, and even as you see Jesus, he we are God is wild, passionate, strong. He's a warrior. Exodus says that. God is all these things, like, and he's a loving, romantic God, and he has all these emotions and all these feelings for us, and men are like that too. Like as a man, like I'm passionate. As a man, I like to feel fierce. The book puts it in such a good way. Men want to feel powerful. Men want to know they have what it takes to pull through, and that's essentially what God made us. What He made us to do. He made men so we can come through, so we can pull ourselves up and just pull through at the end, like God pulls through for us.
Right.
And oftentimes where I'm up to now is just like oftentimes we, especially nowadays, we don't come through. We don't come through, and it messes with us psychologically.
Well, it's one of those things. One of the biggest elements missing in our society is just masculine leadership. Be it in the
Yeah.
home, be it in the churches, it's how many families are without fathers these days, and for the last several years we've been reaping the result of that because men for various reasons have not manned up and done the responsibilities that they were supposed to do, and instead chase after all things.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that God created man, and God says in Genesis that He created man. Let's create man in our image. So what does that mean? Because obviously we're not able to go out and speak things into creation.
Mm-hmm.
We're not all powerful, all knowing, all present, and all those. So what does it mean to be made in the image of God?
The way God acts, like the Bible explains that His word is written in our hearts. Like
Right.
we bear the image of God not just on the outside but on the inside, spiritually as well. And there are so many examples of who God is, like the character of God, the way He loves His people,
Right.
the patience He has for them, and even the punishment that He has to give, like the fierce punishments that He would have to give to nations.
Right.
Like you see all of this, and like I think that's what it means. Like we're meant to be, I don't know, like in the image of God, like just like leaders. We're to lead, to come, to pull through, like I said, to be passionate, to be adventurous, as God was. God is that. He in fact took a risk, I think, making humankind.
Well, it's we are made to be all those things. The problem that we fall into is that we use the attributes that God has given us and we use them for the wrong things. Men do want to be adventurous, but how does man describe adventure?
Yeah, like in the movies, or
Well,
going off to war.
So going off to war with the military, go
Yeah.
on some quest,
Yeah.
slaying some dragon,
Yeah.
standing up for the weaker person. Just every every comic book that kids read. I love what Jerry Seinfeld says. Boys grow up, read Spider-Man, Superman, Batman. These aren't comic book characters. These are options because all of us are trying to be a superhero.
Yeah.
But that's misdirected. Going to the military and using all your strength and all your courage for the sake of the military is a mistake. Instead, God did put those into us, but for what reason did God give us a spirit of adventure?
to do His work.
To do His work. On Wednesday nights at North Mission Church of Christ, we've been going through the book of Acts. And, the book of Acts tells the account of how the gospel message went out throughout the Roman Empire, thanks to the Apostle Paul and others. And, that's something that I've always loved about studying the first century church, is that the idea of, hey, you need to take this message and you need to, pack a bag and walk to this city 40, 60, 100, 200 miles away and deliver this message over there and evangelize the city and start a church there. You'll get some backup, later, but you go and do the groundwork for it. And they would go, and it is such a mind-blowing thing. Is like people would just relocate, or people would hand deliver the original letters of Paul and others to the other churches, and pick up from one place and go to another place and work there for a time, and then pick up from that place and go somewhere else. Or if they found out that the Apostle Paul was in prison somewhere, or somebody else was in prison or in trouble, they would try to go to that city and locate this person to see what kind of help they can do. And just all that, it was a church on a move, literally. And they didn't think about the danger or the price or the inconvenience of doing this very thing. And that's, you can romanticize anything, but that seems to be the spirit of adventure that God wanted us to have.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, when God would tell Father Abraham, I want you to get all your stuff and, take your wife, you can take Lot with you, and go to the place where I will show you. He doesn't tell Abram at the time where he's going, but he just says, you go to the place I will show you. And Abram trusted God that God would deliver him to wherever this place would be. And he went. That's mind-blowing today, because one of the traps of American Christianity is that we're so comfortable where we are. We want our creature comforts. We don't mind doing some stuff for God as long as I can come home and plop myself on the couch, turn on the TV, and binge watch whatever Netflix show it is that I happen to be watching at the time. But doing the Lord's work is supposed to be filled with the life of adventure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember, I think we were talking to Will the other day, a friend of ours, and that came up during our bros conversation. And I remember saying that, because I think it's just something like I was needing to hear, is that like there is adventure in the good side, or with God, or being a Christian. You just have to look for it.
Yeah.
You got to find it.
It's not just looking and finding it, but you got to be willing to go.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to get out that door and do it. For example, I was talking to my daughter today, and she just asked me out of the blue. She asked, "Are you scared of public speaking?" Which, I'm a preacher, so I public speak, regularly. And I said, "Not anymore." And she says, "Really?" She said, "You used to be." I said, "Yes, I used to be. When I first got into ministry, I was scared to death about speaking in front of a group of people." Yeah. Now, as odd as that is, I decided to go into ministry anyway. People say, "Well, that doesn't make sense." I know it doesn't make sense, but that's my story. That's the way it worked. Is I received the call to go into ministry before I was physically able to do ministry. I mean, that's just the way that God worked in my life, because I was scared to death of it all. And but even something like that, again, going back to Jerry Seinfeld, he told a joke once talking about how speaking in public is the biggest fear that the average person has, right? Yeah. Number 2 is death. So public speaking beat out death.
That's funny.
Which he goes on to say, which means at the average funeral, the average person would rather be in the casket than doing the eulogy. I mean, that's so just doing something like we think being adventurous for God means going to a third world nation and ministering out there, which again, that's part of it. Yeah. But don't shoot ourselves in the foot and thinking that that's the only thing that adventure is. Sometimes adventure for the Lord is overcoming basic fear for us to be able to do the work of the Lord more effectively where we are. Like, if I was still, there was a time, you should ask my wife about this. There was a time in which I would get up and speak when I was still in school, and this was back when I used to write down everything. One of the reasons I don't write down anything anymore. I would try to hide myself, and I'm 6'3". I try to hide myself behind this 11-inch by 8.5-inch piece of paper, and it would shake, over the, But I'm reading it, so I wouldn't have to, look at the people, and the people wouldn't have to see me, and
Wow.
that's why it's like that's why when I try to get people to preach or to teach a lesson, they're like, I can't get in front of people. I'm like, bro, like you have no idea.
Yeah. Well,
But what generates a feeling of adventure? Now, we talked about like military and going on mission trips or going on quests. But how would you describe the feeling of adventure? What does it mean to feel adventurous?
I think it's the risk-taking factor.
Okay.
Taking a risk, and not only taking the risk, is doing the thing to see, like Wild at Heart explains it, to see if I have what it takes to do it.
Right.
No matter what it is. Like if it's sports or if it's anything, but more importantly, if it's ministry. I'm a new Christian, and the idea of ministry is like, it still gets me nervous, when people bring it up, because, I don't know if you knew Carl. He was so boldly able to say, "I see a future in ministry for you."
Yeah,
like,
I know.
yeah.
I saw that, and I saw you immediately look at your shoes.
Like, yeah.
But that's a topic for another day,
Yeah.
maybe. But then you have to ask yourself, well, what does ministry mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
'Cause
so I still have a lot to learn.
Yeah, because people hear that and they say, "Oh, he means being a pulpit preacher." Well, maybe, it's possibly,
yeah.
but like what we're doing here right now, that's ministry.
Interesting.
Going out and if you profess God when you perform somewhere live, that's ministry.
Interesting.
When you're going to jiu-jitsu and you're talking with your friends about various troubles and issues they have in life, and you take it from a Christian perspective, that's ministry. So all these things are ministry.
Huh.
If you are part of a church, that church auditorium, or if you want to call it the sanctuary or whatever it is that you call your gathering place, where the combined worship takes place, that church auditorium should be filled up with ministers doing various forms of ministry in their daily life. But you're right. Going back to what does adventure feel like? It's that risk taking. It's that risk taking element, stepping outside from what your norm is in order to do something different. Yeah.
Yeah.
For example, you look from a biblical point of view. The disciples walked with the Lord for 3 years before Jesus was crucified, right? But it wasn't. We're not given dates. The gospel writers didn't say. And after we were with Jesus, after day 366, we did X. Now
we're given times.
Yeah,
weird third hour of the night.
But so anywhere from within, if you were to guesstimate it, maybe within a year to a year and a half, so to speak, maybe. There came a time in which Jesus sent out the 12.
Yeah.
2 by 2 to go and preach among the areas of Galilee and Judea. It's and you think about that for a minute. It's one thing, and I experienced a low level version of this when I was in preaching school, because you go to school, you're learning from these people who have done it for years. And I think this is very common if you've ever received any sort of training in anything. When you're in school or you're in class, that's a very comfortable place. It's a safe place, because you're learning from your instructor. And even if it's like a hands-on lesson, your instructor is overseeing everything that you do.
Yeah.
But there comes a time in which you have to leave the nest, so to speak, and take what you've learned away from the safety of your instructor and go and, lack of a better phrase, ply your trade in a place where, again, you're seemingly by yourself. that can be a spirit. That's the spirit of adventure.
Yeah.
And that's what the 12 had to do, is that they went 2 by 2 away from Jesus. But Jesus says, you go and do the things that I was doing. You go and say the things that I was saying, and you go profess this message. Yeah, Jesus, you coming with us? No, you're going.
Yeah.
You're going. You're going to do this. But but listen to my instructions. Profess my name. You're going to be fine. You might be rejected. People might sometimes try to hurt you, but you're going to be okay because my Father knows you. My Father's going to take care of you. Yeah, there was some adventure there.
Yeah.
But that's what it took. It took the leaving. They had to get away in order to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to think about my life, in some sort of, because like when the idea of Jesus sending the 12 out, like, that's ministry. That's scary. But like you said, now it's, there's more to ministry than that. But like, to recognize what is an adventure, right? Like, I mean, it could, right now I'm trying to make a studio happen.
Right.
Like, that is a risk. That is like, on top of that, I converted. I'm born again Christian, and my mission is to glorify God wherever I'm at. So like, it's a whole thing where like I see the adventure in front of me, and yet I still find trouble feeling like, I don't know, like it's the right one. Like, am I where I'm supposed to be? What adventure, what risk should I really be taking? And it comes from the idea of like originally thinking that I have to go somewhere and do something different somewhere else and leave it all behind and start a church in a cannibalistic country. I gotta go all in, baby. And I think that's been what's weighing on my mind.
Now again, some people are called to do that.
Yeah.
And that's great. But also is America a Christian nation?
No.
I mean, is there still lots to do in our nation?
Yeah.
Is there still lots to do in the Rio Grande Valley?
Yeah.
And so again, ministry is wherever you find it. Now, I remember when I was in my last year of preaching school, I was an intern at Mesquite Church of Christ up in the Dallas area. And it was getting close to my graduation day and everything. And this guy comes up to me. I've known him for years, and I have no doubt believing that he was trying to come from a right place. But he said one of those things that just was like, did you really just say that to me? And what he said was that, I don't believe anybody's a real preacher until they go off on some mission trip.
Yeah.
Or until they do. And what he meant by that was that he didn't view anybody as a preacher until they did some sort of mission trip, like away from America, doing what you're talking about, going to a third world nation and doing all this, leaving behind and going all in there. And that didn't sound right to me. And through the years, I've presented this to every missionary and preacher that I've come to know well, that I can share stories with and whatnot. And they all responded the same way I did, was like, that's not accurate at all. Again, who is this guy to say what is and what isn't a mission? Who is this guy to say what is and what isn't an adventure for God? I heard a preacher say once, unfortunately I can't remember his name, but when I went to the Red River Family Encampment, he was speaking, one of the keynote speakers, and he says, God's not so worried about you going to Ecuador, but he wants you to go next door. I mean, and that's the thing. It's, again, you can read Acts and you get the juices flowing about Paul going to all the places he went to. But what we got to remember is that, yes, when Paul was going and traveling to all these nations, James, half brother of Jesus, was working with the church in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And everywhere that Paul would set up churches in Philippi and Colossae and Thessalonica and Ephesus and the region of Galatia and all these various places, he was setting up elderships. He was setting up elders to work with the congregations. Why? So that when Paul left, the churches would be in good hands. In other words, the only reason Paul had the freedom to travel the way that he did was that he was able to leave God-fearing, Christ-following men behind that were going to work with the churches as elders. So not everybody's able to just pick up and travel like Paul did.
Yeah.
Some people have to stay in order to maintain the work.
Right.
And even if you're doing ministry on the local level, that's still an adventure. And just because, even if you never leave your hometown, are you able to maintain a faithful congregation in the middle of a dark world in a city that needs it? Well, if you can, well, God bless you.
I feel like Batman when you say it like that.
Hey, I mean, that's what it is. We don't have the hammers of justice, but it's, but that's again, that's ministry, and you don't have to go elsewhere. That might look good to pad a resume, but I mean, it's, it is what it is. The question is, do you trust God to direct you where you need to go?
Yeah.
And that's the secret. We North Mission down here in Palmhurst, Texas, which is the northern side of Mission, hence North Mission. It's the third congregation that Sherry and I have worked with, since 2004. And so we've done job searches for 3 times. And every time we did a job search, we would just pray that God would send us, it's like, God, you send us where we need to be. Yeah. And then and people ask me, how does a preacher find a job? Well, this is how a preacher finds a job. We're not like the Catholic Church from the mindset that, in the Catholic Church, the fathers are sent. They're told specifically from their leadership, you're going to go to this church. Yeah. And the Churches of Christ and other, it's more like a job search like anybody else does. You go to the want ads, in which Christian newspapers like the Christian Chronicle and also schools like Sunset and other places have job ads. And churches post want ads, very similar to any other career. And you scroll through these ads, they give you some information and situations about what the church is and what, and you apply for the ones you want to. You prepare a resume, you send a resume. You also send sermons, like, if you're trying out for The Voice or something, you you send them sermons and then you wait to hear back from them. Yeah. And there you are. And so when you start this process, you just pray for God to direct you and for God to send you where you're going to go. And then you do the work, but you leave it up to Him.
Yeah. And
again, we were sent to New Mexico, which was 750 miles away from, our family. Wow. And then the second time he sent us to southeastern Oklahoma, which is only like 200 miles. So it was closer. It was like right over the Texas-Oklahoma border. And then we got shot down south again. So again, it is what it is.
Yeah. And, I think it's funny because you talk about leaving it to God. There was a funny coincidence that I hear you had that you met Carl in New Mexico.
I never met him in New Mexico.
He was also in New Mexico.
He was also in New Mexico, but he was in New Mexico before I was.
Oh.
Yeah. Because, we live in South Texas, Arnold and I, so we have very good Border Patrol presence down here in South Texas. But, when we were in New Mexico, we were in the town of Deming, New Mexico, which is 30 miles north of Mexico. And so we also had a strong Border Patrol presence there as well. And so also when people go through the Border Patrol training, they spend time in New Mexico. So yeah, Carl and I actually spent time in the same town, but at different times.
It's just a funny coincidence.
It's just
I always thought
it's an interesting
I thought it was an
coincidence,
interesting coincidence.
absolutely.
It
But
sounds like a
he,
superhero origin story.
but the thing about it is, if my understanding is correct, he wasn't doing ministry at the time.
Oh, right.
Again,
Yeah.
it was strictly border patrol.
So I want to, I don't want to, I want to get back to the idea here, of giving up to God and, finding the adventure. Like how with what you were doing, it seems a lot easier to see that you're being led by God. But like, how do you know that your choice is being led by God, right? Like all the time. I mean, we've talked about that, that kind of conscience, like when something you're doing is good or bad, like
Right.
something you're doing is glorifying God, and if it's
Right.
not glorifying God, well, you're not doing it right.
Right.
But yeah, but like for like the little things, like how do you know you got the right job? How do you know you're starting the right business? How do you know you're in the right community? You're doing the right things in your community, whether it's like volunteering or even working for the government. Like, oh, we got a text.
Yeah. Sorry, I put it on silent, but it's
Yeah.
on vibrate and it's sitting on your thing. So.
But yeah, but like stuff like things like that. Because I'm also looking, I'm looking to do this. Like I'm being encouraged by another friend of ours from church to apply for a government job. I'm being encouraged by another friend of mine to apply for other jobs. Like
Right.
I'm encouraged by my current client to stay as a freelancer so I can be more available for him. Right? It
If
was
you're like, can I ask you something about that? If you're only available for one client, are you in fact freelancing?
I am available for a lot of other stuff.
Okay.
Actually, but like I'm like he just gives me he gives me a lot of work and he asks the most of me.
Right.
But yeah, but
Well, I mean, not to sound hokey, I mean, it's it's weird. I mean, it's the first time we had a job search. I had 2 interviews before I made the decision let me say, before Sherry and I made the decision to go to New Mexico. Okay, so here's the thing, kids. If you're married and you're looking to relocate somewhere, be sure you have your spouse's support as well, or it can make for a very difficult time. Sherry and I decided to go to New Mexico. And here was the situation. We prayed hard for God to send us to where we could be effective. Because again, this might be semantics. I don't know. There's a difference between having an easy time and being effective. And sometimes the struggle's worth it. And and so the first interview was in Deming, New Mexico, and we went as part of the hiring process is that since preachers usually only preach on Sundays, and if a church likes your resume and likes the sermons that you sent, they'll invite you out to the local church to do a weekend tryout. So you get to spend like Saturday and Sunday at least. If it's far away, probably like a Friday through a Monday if you have to fly in or whatever. And get to know some of the people, get to see the area,
right.
preach Sunday morning, Sunday night, teach a Bible class, have the interview, which every time I've gone through that, it's a 3-hour question and answer period with the church leadership. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. And again, and let me say this, by the way, they have the right to do that.
Well, yeah.
I have, no problem with that,
Yeah.
because they want, because again, you're up until that point, you might have had a phone interview, when we were in, for North Mission, for example, we were able to link up since the technology got there to do like a web interview. So my face was actually shown up on that screen in front of our auditorium, in front of the search committee. I looked like Oz, the Great and Powerful from The Wizard of Oz, talking to the elders and also talking to the search committee. But that happened before the tryout. So you do all your due diligence as much as you can before you actually meet the person in person, before a church will spend the money to bring you over, right? And so when we got to Deming, we flew to El Paso, and we were picked up and driven to Deming, New Mexico, which is 100 miles to the west from El Paso. We spent a weekend there, right? And it went fine. It went well. In fact, we left early Monday morning so I could get back to school. We already had people crying that we were leaving. This was Sherry and I, and so again, it went fabulous. Now, like a week or two later, I had another interview, and I don't want to say the name of the town because I don't want to offend anybody, but it couldn't have gone much worse. To the point that, and I don't want to rehash this because Sherry does listen to us, so I don't want to bring up negative imagery. But let's just say it was a bad situation. In fact, it was like one of those times in which after I got done speaking that morning, we were trying to find ways and sneak off and not have to go back that night. But they had our stuff, So, and then as bad as it all went, because, like I said, it just went bad. It was just, not a good situation. They offered me that job that night. Yeah. And I turned it down. And they got mad at me that I turned down their job. I mean, wow. and I was blamed, and it was just and so when we finally get into the car and start heading back to the Dallas area, we looked at each other and we said, well, I guess we know where God wants us to go. Because that's what we prayed. We prayed hard. It's like, God, give us signs. Tell us where we need to go. And he showed up. Yeah. So that's one case, and again, that was very evident, but also it's not to sound hokey, this is a movie quote, but you just get this stirring in the force. I mean, it's you get this stirring because you got to ask yourself, in your situation, you need to set up your parameters. You need to be honest with yourself and have some conversations with God through the Spirit and think about what you want. What do you want?
You asking me right now?
I am asking you right now.
Oh, right now?
Right now. What do you want?
To not worry about anything.
Okay, well... Okay.
Well, I want, this business is something I've wanted. This music...
You're talking about your studio.
The studio, the music business, the making music, making a music portfolio.
Right.
And, for a long time, what I really wanted to do was be a part of the local music scene from where I lived,
right,
and help it, and that's what I want. So sometimes, I went to college in Boston. I felt really homesick when I was there. I felt like I just wanted to be back here,
right.
And all my friends were still doing music here and stuff like that. That's just I still feel like I was just called to come back,
right.
I just couldn't handle it over there.
Okay.
So I know what I want has to do with probably staying here.
Okay. And you know what? And there's no shame. See, the way you were talking to me earlier, you're almost feeling guilt that you don't necessarily want to travel somewhere else and live, right? Yeah. So again, it's why?
Well, that's why, because it's just that's the feeling that sometimes I get, or a friend of ours likes to make the joke that in China you're not a true missionary unless you went to jail.
A preacher.
You're not a true preacher unless you went to jail.
Yeah.
So it's just what can I do to...
Hey, guess what? But the thing about that story, they went to their local jail.
Oh, there's just a local jail.
No, but I mean, it was where they were from.
Right.
Is one of them.
Oh, yeah, they stayed at home.
Yeah, they stayed at home. They went to prison at home.
Yeah,
but that's
Yeah, so it's just am I so to speak taking the risks that I need to take for God, because that has to deal with ultimately me feeling like a true man.
Well, again, the risk factor, you can stay home and still risk. again, our friend would also tell you the same thing. The idea that you have to go somewhere else to do ministry is a short-sighted idea, unless you're called to do so. Missionary, not everybody can do missionary work. It is some. I tell you what, like I said, my kids are native New Mexicans. They were born in New Mexico. They lived in Oklahoma, and they live down here. I'm a Dallas native. I lived in Dallas, Texas, Nacogdoches, Texas, Deming, New Mexico, Antlers, Oklahoma, and McAllen, Texas. And again, some of those places were all in Texas, but Texas is so big that the culture is totally different. And from Dallas to Nacogdoches to McAllen, it's totally different. Because of just the way that the culture is made up. So again, in other words, risking in the local field is possible because you don't have to go all the way somewhere else in order to ingratiate yourself to a new culture, because some people can't even handling the different culture that you have on the other side of town. I grew up in the Dallas Metroplex. I grew up in Southeast Dallas, Pleasant Grove. Whoop. And and folks from Pleasant Grove are different from people in Mesquite, are different from people in Plano, different from people in Richardson, different from people in Irving and Arlington and inside of Dallas city limits and Oak Cliff and Duncanville and Cedar Hill and all that. But we were part of the Metroplex, but it's totally different. And so again, to try to force people and say, you're not doing ministry unless you're going to some other new foreign culture, it's shooting a lot of people in the foot, because some people cannot handle that much new culture. Yeah. And in fact, some missionaries have told me it's like they've been around other missionaries that literally hated the people that they were trying to minister to. It's like, the stereotypical American. It's like, oh, I'm surrounded by all these foreigners. Why don't they get their act together? I mean, it's like, well, because you're not in America. And unless you can pull yourself up by your big boy pants and admit that, you know what, Sparky, you're not in America anymore. They do things differently over here. You're going to have to learn how to deal with the people where you are. Yeah. Again, some people can't do that, but yet you're going to ask these people to relocate. It's like if you're born and raised, I don't know how much you experience this, but we experienced it a lot when we moved outside of Texas. Life's a whole lot different outside of Texas. Did you experience that? Yeah. Once they find out you're a Texan, and it's like, the little bit of low key insults and ridicule comes along. I have my friend, best friend in high school. He accepted a job. I believe is when he moved up to Maryland, right? He moved up to Maryland for work, and they found out he was a Dallas native, and they actually asked him. They were serious. Do people still ride horses to work?
They're like, where's your accent?
Yeah, and it's like, dude, man, DFW is bigger than Maryland. Shut up. I mean, it's like, come on. But again, not everybody can handle moving away. But again, moving away and just sinking yourself into a new culture isn't the only form of ministry, nor is it the only form of adventure. What people need to ask themselves is, what are they willing to give to the Lord? What are they willing to get? How is it that they can work effectively for God? Now, for some people, it is moving to a different culture. Like some strong members of the North Mission Church are Jim and Peggy Hoskin, and this is they're older now, but they were a missionary couple, and they're from the northern part of the United States, but they worked 50 years in Mexico. And so for them, they could do that. They were able to handle that, and that was their great adventure. But again, they were willing to give that to God. You're wanting to start your own business, which is adventurous. You're wanting to increase your talent ratio. You're wanting to do, work up your portfolio and do all this stuff. That's risky. That's adventurous. The question is, what parts of your adventure are you willing to give to God? And that's what you got to figure out. It's parachuting out of a plane is adventurous, but does that necessarily mean you're glorifying God? So again, it's and he shook his head no, by the way. Head gestures don't work well on radio. Arnold,
no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
But that's what people need to figure out is how much are they willing to let God steer their lives. Again, the Apostle Paul, had the mindset of he wanted to be the first person. He wanted to be the pioneer with the gospel. He wanted to be the first worker of the gospel into every area that he went to, and he didn't want to build up on anybody else's work. And that's something that drove him. But again, there was tons of other people that never left the area that the church got started in.
Yeah.
So who's right and who's wrong?
Our roles are going to be different, but they're all equally important.
That's right. Because that's the thing, and missionaries will tell you this too. Yeah, it's good to have missionaries, but we also need people who are able to fund missions. We also need people to build up the churches back home so that there's still people willing to fund missions. And so again, in other words, it all builds upon itself.
Yeah.
And we can't do without the other. This is how come the body of Christ is vast.
Yeah, and I'm just, like I said, I'm just making sure that everything I'm doing, that there's room, that of course there has to be room to glorify God, and making sure I do it. And Jeff is showing me the time. You try to be sneaky about it, man.
I know. I try to be sneaky.
But
nobody would have known, Arnold.
I know. But no, I mean, there's not much else I can really say, but that is the gist of, everything that I'm trying to come at you with today.
Right. Well, let me hit that again, because we've sidetracked a little bit. Again, you have to be honest with yourself and say, God, I'm doing this, but I want you to guide it. And so if people, they used to have the bumper sticker that was famous, Jesus is my co-pilot. But the thing about it is that, and I'm not the first person to say this, but if Jesus is your co-pilot, then you need to switch seats. If you want Jesus to run your life, let him run it.
Yeah.
So as you go on, now if you're looking for the immediate answer, sometimes you might get it, sometimes you might not. Like when we went to that other town and to try to figure out where we should first go to, we weren't there 5 minutes before we realized we might have made a very big mistake. And then it just started going worse from there.
Yeah.
But again, no joke, I say 5 minutes, but less than a half an hour. We're we might have made a big mistake. Sometimes it is quick. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it might take some time. And so are you present enough in mind? And again, this is why it's so important to figure out what is it that you want. And if you want Christ to gear your life, then as you go through your life, evaluate your life often and say, okay, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, but is X, Y, and Z enabling me to fulfill the mission that God has set me on? You're asking about you have all these jobs, be willing to think big picture. Is which of these opportunities has the best chance of me fulfilling my role for the kingdom of heaven? For example, we have a friend. He's going to remain nameless, but he wanted to go into ministry. And when he was contemplating going into ministry, he had 2 years or so left at his career before he was able to get his pension. Right? He was about ready to chunk all that and go into the mission field. But the elders of the church that he was attending to one day was like, "Whoa, it's admirable what you want to do, but consider this. If you finish your hitch, you get your pension, you're going to have more freedom because you won't have to spend half your time trying to get funds because you'll have incoming funds anyway." And so he saw the wisdom in that, stayed, got his pension, and then went into ministry. Yeah. So again, you're on fire for the Lord. You're passionate. You've realized you spent the first part of your life in some unsavory situations, and now you want to dedicate what you got. But also allow Christ the time to work, and allow Christ to steer you. And again, be reasonable and be honest with yourself. Is these opportunities, is it going to help the mission, or is it going to hinder me? And then make your decisions accordingly. And also, something else like Sherry and I was doing in that job search situation. Pray for God to show you. Pray for God to show you. If this is for the benefit of the kingdom, or is this might be a little bit more selfish. He'll show you. I don't know how, but he'll show you. He'll make that known. Especially if you're in a position where you're looking for the signs. You know what I mean? For example, in the book of Genesis, there's an interesting situation in which Abraham sends his manservant home back to the home country to find a wife for his son Isaac. Mm-hmm. And when the manservant is outside of town, he prays to God and says, "Okay, for the sake of my master Abraham, let the one who would be the good wife for his son be the one who comes out and offers to water the camels and also decides to feed them." And that was the sign. And you get a few of these times in the Bible which somebody asked for a legitimate sign and the sign was done.
Yeah.
And so again, it's the idea of praying to God to direct you, praying to God to show you, praying to God to guide you in the path that you will take. And again, he'll make his will known somehow.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna do that. I'm doing that, Jeff. And
I don't doubt.
I hope that not only me, but whoever's listening, take something away from that too.
Right, because again, when you put it all in God's hands, and you take your decisions out of it, you have no idea where you're going to end up. You have no idea what you're going to do. This is reckless behavior. Ergo, it's adventurous. Full circle.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll be signing off now. It was great talking to you again today, Jeff. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for everyone who is listening. And if you're looking for us, you can look for Jeff.
You can look for me on Facebook under Jeff LaPlace.
You can find me under Arnold Martinez.
And if you are also on Facebook, you can look for the Spiritual Defense Facebook page. And also you can find us on SoundCloud.
And Church of Christ on YouTube.
Yes, and
for
if
North
you want
Mission
to see
Church of Christ.
Various sermons and things that we do from the North Mission Church, which is the church that Arnold and I go to and I preach at, that's at North Mission Church of Christ on YouTube. So, grace and peace to you all, ladies and gentlemen.
Have a great day. God bless you.